Douglas Barr, Royal Dano, Ariana Richards, who would go on to be in Jurassic Park, 5 Martians, Captain Bipto and his loyal Gigglywig, and Pez, Dr. Ziploc, and Blasny. Their scout in a can, their miniature robot called Short Stuff. The Martian invasion arrived in 1990 with Spaced Invaders. One of my favorite films of all time in the genre of science fiction and comedy. I have watched this movie so many times, I own it, and I watched it again just last night. Growing up as a Star Trek fan, from young childhood, late 70s, watching the reruns, being excited for the motion picture, I grew up in an environment where I took my science fiction very seriously. If it was anything sci-fi, if it was anything about the future, anything that you could dream of passionately about the future yet to come, I was into it. I mention that because the result of that was I really didn't enjoy science fiction comedy such as it was. When Spaceballs came out, I was deeply annoyed by the movie Spaceballs. I love Mel Brooks now, and I love the movie Spaceballs now. But that level of parody requires a level of maturity where you really grasp what they're doing and with what love and affection they're poking fun at stuff. Making fun of the ludicrous drive, making fun of going faster than light, the stormtroopers, the dark helmet, all of that cool stuff, all the way down to the merchandising. I bring that up because Spaced Invaders, which I loved immediately in 1990, I watched it over and over on VHS tape, giving away my age. It never got the credit I felt it deserved. It isn't really parody. In some sense, it's a parody of science fiction about alien invasions, and yet it doesn't really feel like that. You could point to any number of things that it does pull from other science fiction franchises, but not really. It's the farce of the plot that makes it funny. They don't actually poke fun at those things. In fact, it feels more like the entire film is an homage. It's a tribute to the great science fiction of the past, maybe in the way a roast would be, but again, it's not really parodying any specific part of it, but we get everything. The film opens, and we will get recurrences of, in the soundtrack, Mars. Mars by Holst, part of his set of classical pieces on the planets. And it's recognizable because it was used in any number of sci-fi films. Coming out of a time when more people were familiar with the classical piece, it was sort of the logical thing to put in films dealing with Mars. We open with the big buildup of that musical movement, Mars from Holst the Planets. We get a space fleet, sort of standard outer space trope. But when we see the Martians are imperial in their form, their regalia, their uniforms. We hear about the Emperor, his imperial majesty, Mars. There's the salute that they do later. There's all of this stuff built in that is very much like John Carter, Tars Tarkin, Deja Forest, the novels of Edgar Rice Burroughs, famously set on Mars. But these Martians also immediately appear to us wearing full helmets that cover their faces. Fans of Ray Bradbury, especially the Martian Chronicles, will recognize this. Those helmets that they're wearing are not just helmets, they are literally masks. The way they're worn and the way they present, they're a mask. And in the Martian Chronicles, the Martian culture, we learn was obsessed with the use of masks for everyday life sort of ritual purposes. Sort of like the ancient Greek plays, the actors wore masks that perpetually depicted their mood rather than emoting with their natural face. On Bradbury's Mars, there's any number of different types of masks for different occurrences, even for conflict is the one we see most readily in that novel. But putting the mask on to put that face forward, we get all of this in Spaced Invaders within the first few moments. Therefore we get H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, the Orson Welles version of that being broadcast, which leads the Martians erroneously, these 5 Martians and their ship, to attack Earth. And we end up getting H.G. Wells' literal older version, the giant Martian machine, when Captain Bipto takes over the mind and control of the local gas station car shop attendant and co-ops his design to construct this giant farmzoid in order to irrigate all the farms in town, but now turns it into a weaponized Martian device. So we end up finally at one point in the movie with a giant Martian machine lumbering across the field. It's incredible stuff, how it all sort of ties together. The most obvious thing that it is Halloween and Orson Welles' version has been on the radio. This misleads them into erroneously attacking Earth. They end up falling in with trick-or-treaters. We get these hilariously over-the-top Martians who are willing to make observations that are funny. Like, how can they not know we're Martians? We're little green men with antennas. They have this wonderful set of overdone super villainy, such as the imperialism, the captain, the Martian salute, Dr. Ziploc, who suspiciously sounds German in his accent with a weird reference. And who else could be in the back of a station wagon and make a statement like, oh yeah? Well, who shot his heat-seeking populist annihilator out the window, huh? Good stuff. The movie ends up being, it is hilariously funny. It has a good moral of the story. There's an interesting subplot. It's a small town in Illinois. They just got their first off-ramp. They're hoping that the town, some of them are hoping the town will become a thriving metropolis. People whose farms are mortgaged and during the drought are losing their farm. It's being gobbled up by the local banker because he wants to expand and do other things with the property now that they have highway access. And in the end, finally, the Martians end up saving Royal Dano's farm by ejecting all of what appears to be their manure out of their ship to lighten the load so they can take off. Somehow or another, that super fertile Martian manure, I don't know, maybe it's irradiated or something, it mutates and the entire crop grows extra thick. He's got crop overnight, crop to sign over, he gets to keep his farm, and everybody lives happily ever after. The girl Kathy, played by Ariana Richards, probably sums it up best when she explains to her dad, the new local sheriff, they're not really bad, they're just really dumb. And that's sort of the whole shtick, is that these 5 Martians, though we saw their very impressive fleet at the beginning, even that had some comedic value. The way that the generals in their masks, the admirals, behaved was kind of silly. But these guys are the rejects. They're the ones that were on asteroid patrol. They were the ones that weren't going to invade Arcturus with the fleet. They end up mistaking the radio broadcast, coming to Earth, and all of this hilarity ensues. And it ends up just being a very fun story. But what I love most about it is the way it ties in all of that great classic science fiction about Mars. And it does it in this way that it's a tribute, even though it's comedic. I can't say enough good stuff about it. I'm glad I have a copy. If you haven't seen it, see it. If you have, or you do get to it, let me know what you think below. I think it's one of the great sci-fi movies, comedy movies of all time. I'd probably put it right under Galaxy Quest for sci-fi comedy. I'd put it a little bit above Spaceballs, which is probably controversial enough because Mel Brooks is otherwise fabulous, but that's a good movie. But I really love Space Invaders. Space Invaders is right up there. Let me know what you think, and we will see you next time. Peace and long life.